President Trump made a historic announcement over the weekend regarding peace in the Middle East. Many nations signed this agreement to achieve peace, and Mark Carney was present and seems to have some very friendly interactions with Trump. Here to comment is political commentator Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun. Brian, welcome back. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so Brian, on Monday, which was Thanksgiving here, Mark Carney was in Egypt for the signing of the Trump peace plan for Gaza, and it looks like Trump was even caught on hot mic saying that he upgraded Carney to president and made a joke saying, "At least I didn't call you governor." So have you heard about this? What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. This is something that the internet was going wild about on Monday as we're all eating Thanksgiving turkey, watching a bit of CFL football, watching the Jays lose, unfortunately. People are taking solace in a bit of fun happening between Donald Trump and Mark Carney. So while Trump was up on stage giving his speech about the peace plan that everyone had signed, and Mark Carney flew there to sign it. We can talk about that in a moment, but he starts calling out different leaders. It's funny. Trump at the beginning said, "I'm not going to take too much time. All these leaders standing behind me. I don't want you to stand too long." And then he gave a really long speech. And as part of it, he's saying, "Oh, this leader's here, and thank you for this, and this leader's here, and thank you for that." And he calls out Kennedy, calls out Mark Carney, but he refers to him as president, not prime minister. He calls him President
Carney
from the stage. And so at the end of it, while the mic's still hot, after Trump had said, "Thank you, we're done. Can the media please leave?" Carney walks up to him and says, "Thanks for upgrading me to president." Now, for anyone who's going to get offended at that, I'm sorry, don't get offended. A president always outranks a prime minister. Even in countries that have both a president and a prime minister, the president is higher, such as you can look to Ireland, you can look to Israel, you can look to many different republics that have a prime minister and a president. The president is higher, often symbolic, much like our governor general. So he says, "Thank you for upgrading me to president." And they have a laugh about it. And then Trump leans in, says something to him. It's hard to hear, but the audio appears to say, "At least I didn't call you governor." And then he slaps Carney on the shoulder and they have a laugh. This is good news for Canada. If the two leaders have a good rapport, a lot of Canadians want to hate Donald Trump. I don't understand that. I can understand some animosity because of the tariffs and 51st state, all of that, but we need to get along with them. And so these two leaders having a good rapport is a good thing. And I would encourage Mark Carney to take that and run with it and try and get a better deal for Canada.
Right. Before we get to that peace plan, the question remains, of course, why was Carney on the stage? Did Canada have anything to do with bringing this peace plan to fruition?
No, nothing at all. Anita Anand, Carney's foreign affairs minister, had tried to claim that last week, saying, "Oh, I worked very closely with Secretary of State Marco Rubio." Well, Marco Rubio did an American television interview where he was asked about these countries that had announced unilaterally a Palestinian state. And he said that they actually got in the way of a peace plan. So you go back to August when Canada announced that in September at the United Nations General Assembly that we were planning to recognize a Palestinian state. What was happening at that point? Well, the United States was in the middle of very tense negotiations to try and get a ceasefire. What happened after Canada, the United Kingdom, and France all said, "We're going to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state" without a peace plan in place? Hamas stood up and walked out of the negotiations. So we actually prolonged the killing. We prolonged the misery. We prolonged the death and the war and the destruction. And that is a shame on our country because of that. Because in the end, Donald Trump's peace plan actually does deliver a two-state solution. And it's one that is more likely to be successful than what Mark Carney, Keir Starmer, and Emmanuel Macron were trying to accomplish with their declarations. The reason I say that, Jeanette, is that this peace plan is going to be financed and supported by neighboring Arab and Muslim countries who have a vested interest in stopping the killing, in stopping the constant terrorism, the war, people who want to see peace because it is in their best interests as well. And so they live in the region, they breathe in the region, they trade in the region, and they want peace. And they are committed to a peace force that will enforce the peace, but also economic benefits for the region so that there is an economy, so that people have jobs. And I find it absolutely bizarre that people say, what does this have to do with economics? We should just be talking about peace. Well, if people feel like they don't have an economic future, they turn to radicalism. If they feel like they have an economic future, are you going to put the economic well-being of your family, of your children, the future of your family at risk over a political pipe dream when you can just say, look, we're going to have a better life. Let's move forward. So this is a better deal. We could have sided with Trump early on. Instead, we did this. Canada had no role in this peace deal. Again, I'll say we were afforded a spot on the stage. We got to sign it. Carney and Trump clearly have a rapport. Let's pivot away from this anti-Americanism that Carney has clearly embraced during the election and since, and let's move towards working together with the Americans for a better deal for the world, but also for ourselves.
Yeah, Brian, you've written that Carney made the right move in going to Egypt, standing with Trump, and then now you're saying that he should use this moment to pivot, which is all well and fine. Why, why did Carney need to charter a private plane to get over there?
Because sadly, we don't have the military that we used to. I don't know if it's because it was Thanksgiving and everyone was released to go on leave with their families. This was last minute, but yeah, all of our air crews were apparently not available.
Okay.
The planes were not available. So what did he do? He chartered a private jet last moment. I don't have an issue with this, other than it is a bad look for our country that our prime minister has to fly on a private jet for security reasons, and yet when he needs that jet, it's not available. I'm not going to begrudge the fact that he took the private charter. Whatever the cost is, the cost is. Apparently, it is a lower cost than the Canadian Armed Forces and what it costs them. But it is just a sign, another sign of our military not being what it should be. So yeah, they went with the lowest cost. I don't always like that, going with the absolute lowest cost, because you don't always get what you pay for when you do that. You're not going to get good value. But they went with the lowest cost after several bids came in. And yeah, he flew to Egypt on that, and he should be on his way back home at this point.
All right, fair enough. Brian, President Trump has been vilified as a warmonger, a Nazi, and yet he brokered this deal, which appears to be the best chance at peace and rebuilding Gaza. So even his political opponents are praising this. Are you surprised?
I'm surprised at some of the political opponents that are praising him, including Bill Clinton. Of course, Donald Trump defeated Bill Clinton's wife, Hillary Clinton.
Right.
She has also praised Donald Trump for this peace deal. The last time we came this close was Bill Clinton in the early 2000s. And, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, is that for decades, American presidents chased peace in the Middle East, and it was elusive. Clinton was as close as we came with the Oslo Accords, with the meeting at Camp David in 2000. And then Arafat walked away from it. We ended up with the Intifada, then the second Intifada. George W. Bush, he chased it as well. He came close, not as close as Clinton, but he came close. And then after that, for Barack Obama, for Trump's first term, for Biden's second term, the idea of peace between Israel and the Palestinians was, let's not talk about it. Let's just manage it. And nobody really pushed for it. And then in Trump's second term, he came in and said, we're going to do this. I'm told that this same peace deal was on the table about a year ago, prior to the election. Joe Biden wasn't interested. The Israelis weren't interested. Hamas wasn't interested. But most of the 20 points in this 20-point peace plan were there. Trump came in, eventually looked at it and said, okay, we can work with this. He leaned on Netanyahu. The Qataris leaned on Hamas, others leaned on Hamas. Both sides got their respective allies in the region to accept something. We'll see if it lasts. Hamas is already looking like they're trying to get out of it. They say they won't disarm. They say they won't, give up power. And they have only released 4 remains of the 28 deceased hostages. So there's 24 remains of deceased hostages still being held. We have to see if this holds, but it is the best chance that we've had in more than 25 years, and we've got to hope for the best.
Yeah, and getting back to Trump, are you surprised, Brian, that he did not receive the Nobel Peace Prize?
Not really, because as someone who is not generally liked by the establishment, I understand what Trump's going through. The establishment does not like Donald Trump. They don't like me either. I'm not putting myself on the same level as Donald Trump. But if the establishment doesn't like you, it doesn't matter what you do. They're not going to necessarily pull for you. He is someone that the establishment will only give these sorts of things to reluctantly. Now, the president of Pakistan stood up in Egypt on Monday and talked about how Trump should get the Nobel Peace Prize. He's got others saying he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. One of the things that struck me, I was watching this report from a reporter on the ground who followed Trump to Jerusalem and then to Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. And he said, you who else in the world could go into the Knesset in Israel and get such a warm welcome and personally know so many members of the Israeli administration, and then an hour later be in a room in Egypt surrounded by Arab and Muslim leaders and get the same warm welcome and also know them personally and individually as well? And he said Trump was able to do this through a force of personality. Whether we like him due to what he's doing in terms of trade with Canada or not, he needs to be recognized for this. This is an important moment. I think he should have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize based on what he's done with Israel, what he's trying to do with Russia and Ukraine, and what he's done for all these smaller conflicts around the world, which he has put an end to, in which the president of Pakistan said, look, we were escalating between India and Pakistan, 2 nuclear powers. Who knows where it could have gone had President Trump not intervened? They decided to go a different way because it's not, well, something that will get you plaudits at a cocktail party giving the Nobel Peace Prize to Donald Trump.
Yeah, and it's funny how earlier you mentioned that the Clintons even praised him. Hillary Clinton herself said that if he was able to broker this deal, she herself would nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Pretty big words coming from Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Brian, while Carney was in Egypt, his foreign minister, Anita Anand, was in India and will soon visit China to try and improve relations. So what should we expect from this?
Well, a bit of normalization between India and China after a disastrous time with sorry, a bit of a change between Canada and India after a disastrous time with Justin Trudeau. Of course, there was his 2018 trip where he was Captain Bollywood. He was doing the Bhangra dancing. He was changing costumes constantly. Indians were cringing and saying, "Okay, come on, this is too much." And of course, in that trip, he also invited a convicted terrorist, someone who had tried to kill an Indian cabinet minister on Canadian soil. So, that was the start of bad relations. And the Trudeau administration never really turned away from the Khalistani movement, which is a separatist movement in India that wants a separate Khalistani homeland for the Punjab region. And you've got Sikhs in Punjab who don't want this, and you've got more Sikhs in Canada who are pushing for this, and those were the people that Justin Trudeau was listening to. Then he accused India of extraterritorial assassination on Canadian soil without providing any evidence. I'm not saying they didn't do it, but you've got to at least provide the evidence, and he never would. So, Mark Carney is trying to fix things. This is important. India is the world's largest democracy. They are an important trading partner. So this is good that there is a thawing of relations. I'm less sure about the idea of thawing relations with China. We are still in the middle of a trade war with them. We are in constant trade wars with China. We don't hear the elbows up rhetoric that we do with the United States when it involves China, because it's primarily aimed at, agricultural goods, primarily out of Western Canada. But, there's a push on to drop the EV tariffs on Chinese EVs, and we see a lot of fighting between the premiers on that. Wab Kinew, Scott Moe, Danielle Smith all want those EV tariffs gone. Doug Ford here in Ontario does not. Others do not. Um, you know, uh, there are a lot of moving factors in this. So this is a very delicate operation. I'm not sure Anita Anand is the person for the job, but we'll wait and see.
Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.